What's going on, gardeners? It's Monday, January 2nd, and it is a gorgeous, glorious start to the new year here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. On today's video, I'm going to show you how to completely rehabilitate and renutrify a container garden in 4 easy steps for planting another round of crops. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated. My container garden over by my teepee trellis is in pretty bad shape and it's looking really rough. That's because I haven't paid it any attention at all since I pulled the plants out of here in mid-fall when we started getting our first few frosts. We all know how important it is to renutrify and revitalize our garden soil every year in our garden beds, but a lot of times we neglect our container garden because we either figure, well, it's a small garden, it doesn't need the love and attention that a big garden gets, or we'll just replace it with new expensive potting mix. Have you seen the cost of potting mix right now? It is out of control. We need to save money and save time, and we need to renutrify our container garden because, believe it or not, it's even more important that we fix up the soil in these bags. That's because when you have an in-ground garden, your plants can pull from the entire earth, but they're stuck with this little bit of nutrients, whatever is in this bag, and every time it rains too much, it washes away that nutrients. So it's very important that we pay proper attention and care to our container garden for best results. The first thing we need to do to rehabilitate our container garden is to remove all instances of weeds, and it's ideal to do this during the winter because we want to remove all the weeds before they flower and go to seed, because if you get weed seed deposited in these containers, they're going to germinate for forever, it's going to feel like. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we remove any weeds inside the mix itself, like you'll see right here. And then after we remove any weeds from inside the bags, we also want to make sure that we remove all the weeds that are growing around the bags. So the first thing we're going to want to do is pick up all of our grow bags and then pull out all of the weeds and dispose of them off-site so we don't get any of the weed seeds anywhere. All of the weeds have now been removed from my containers, and I made sure to go through them and make sure that every single one of the containers has the exact same amount of potting mix in them because I want to make sure that everything is even. Now that we've accomplished that, the second thing we're going to do is we are going to add compost to all of the containers. And the reason why we're doing this is twofold. Number one, we want to add nutrients to the containers, and number two, we want to add more organic matter to the containers to make the soil nice and rich and loamy again. Now at this point, some gardeners like to add fertilizers and other off-the-shelf soil amendments to their containers, and I don't personally like doing this because those products tend to be very expensive, and what are we fertilizing exactly right now? There are no plants growing in there right now, so if we add fertilizers, those fertilizers may break down, but over time the rain is just going to erode it and wash that fertilizer out. So in my opinion, we're wasting money. Save all of that fertilizer for when you actually plant plants in there next season. The compost is more than enough to slowly renutrify your containers and give them a good starting point next season. Now I'm going to use an organic mushroom compost right now. I don't care if you use mushroom compost, manure-based compost, homemade compost, it doesn't matter. All we're trying to accomplish right here is to add vitamins and minerals and macronutrients to the containers and also add that organic matter so they become nice and loamy when we mix it in. And we're going to put 2 to 3 inches of compost in each container. The third thing we're going to do is we're going to take our hands and dig deeply into these bags, and we're going to mix all of this compost in the entire bag. This is not going to be like fertilizing an earth bed with compost where you just top dress around the plants. We want to work this into the bag for 2 reasons. Number one, we don't have the soil microbiology in a grow bag that we do in our garden bed, so we want to distribute this all throughout the bag so all of that nutrients, it evenly distributes throughout the bag. And number two, these have been sitting in the rain and the sun baking all year, so all of the mix in here has compressed into a brick. It's not nice and loose and loamy anymore. So when we dig in and we move all of this organic material into the grow bag, it's going to make the mix nice and light and loamy and aerate it, and all of the large pieces of organic matter is going to add a little bit of oxygen. It's going to oxygenate that soil. So don't be afraid to get your hands dirty right here. You really want to dig in and mix everything around. Now all of that compost has been worked in the containers, and we're ready for our fourth and final tip, and that is to add mulch to the tops of all of the containers. And for me personally, I mulch my containers for a different reason than I mulch my garden. When I mulch my garden beds, I usually use a hardwood bark mulch or a pine bark nugget mulch because they break down quickly, and I'm actually trying to feed the microbiome in my garden and add all of that rich organic matter to the soil. With these grow bags or any kind of container garden, the soil microbiome is very limited, so it's not great at breaking down wood-based mulches. I actually mulch my containers to preserve the nutrients inside the containers and prevent washout, and also when I plant the plants in it, because these containers have a propensity to dry out quickly because they're so small compared to an earth garden bed, I like to put the mulch in there to prevent evaporation. So I'm not adding mulch inside these containers in order to add organic matter per se. I'm doing it actually to protect the containers from washing out all winter long. So I'm actually going to use a rot resistant mulch for that reason. So I'm going to use cedar mulch, but cedar, cypress, and redwood are all natural rot resistant woods that are really good to mulch your containers, since we're using mulch for basically a different reason here. All of these containers are basically going to be sitting still for the next 2 to 3 months being abused by the sun and rain. So we want to protect all of that compost and beautiful soil by placing a 2 to 3 inch layer of a rot resistant mulch on top. And now all of our containers have been mulched and they look fantastic. Now I'm going to give you a fifth potential bonus tip, and this is something that you may not need to do depending on your situation. That bonus tip is to cover all of your containers with a tarp. And if you do that, that will give you 3 distinct benefits. Number 1, it will make your containers warmer in the sun. So if you're trying to speed up the rate of decomposition, like say you're trying to turn over your containers very quickly during the growing season, or the growing season is only a couple of weeks away and you want to really enhance the breakdown of that compost, covering them with the tarp is a great way to do that. Number 2, it will prevent any weed seed germination, since it'll keep not only new weed seeds from blowing around in the air and landing on top of your mulch, but it'll also suppress any weed seeds from germinating due to lack of light that already exists there. Because it's so early in the winter right now, we don't really have any weed seeds blowing around, so I'm not going to do that right now, but if it were spring or summer, it would be advisable. And 3, putting a tarp on will prevent your containers from being washed out if there's any heavy rain in the forecast. We're in our dry season right now, and we've had hardly any rain over the past 90 days, so I'm not trying to protect against any rainfall right now. I actually would like a little bit of light rain to fall in these containers to keep the soil moist and keep that compost that I just added in a constant state of decay. So for me, it's actually beneficial to not cover them with the tarp right now, but if you were doing this at a different time of the year when weed germination was active, or when the rains were very heavy, or you're trying to enhance the breakdown process, it could be highly beneficial. So use the tarp as necessary, as a tool in your toolbox when the right conditions arise. And that right there is how you can quickly and easily rehabilitate a container garden for another planting of crops. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when we release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products that I use for real in my garden, they are all linked down below in my Amazon storefront in the video description. So expand that video description and click on that Amazon link to see everything I use in real life. And while you're there, check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. If you have any questions, please ask them down in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Well, I was almost done prepping the prime rib gravy, and then a moose started running around the house. There's a moose loose in the house. There's a moose loose. Oh, there's a moose loose, and he wants the prime rib bones. Oh boy, are you ready for Christmas dinner, buddy? I honestly, I have no idea what to do with this. This looks absolutely ridiculous. I think he wants it off. Oh, Dale. Oh, what would we do without you?
He's amputating. He's amputating.
What would we do without you? Life would be so boring.